Welcome to Cultivate, a Veritas Academy podcast, where we explore truth, beauty, and goodness through meaningful conversation. We invite you to join us in discussions meant to edify your mind, encourage your heart, and equip your family to live abundantly in Christ.
Welcome back to Cultivate, everyone. I'm Ty Fisher, your host, and I am going to be having a conversation today with Tom Garfield. Tom is one of those people that if you know anything about classical Christian education, you probably come across his name. There are only a handful of people that I would say are so crucial to the foundation of classical Christian education in America that if it were not for them, this thing just wouldn't be. And Tom is one of those fellows. He was the longtime head of school at the Logos School, which is kind of the foundational school of the Association of Classical and Christian Schools. Tom has also been a friend and a mentor to me. Tom still has more years as a head of school than I do. I'm at 27 now, but I'm still trying to catch him. But the truth of it is, there were a few times in my career that I had to gulp and call someone for help, and Tom was an ear that would listen, and he always gave wise counsel. So I don't think I would be in my job if it wasn't for him. So Tom, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Well, jeepers, thank you. I was wondering who you were talking about, but sure, I'll fill in.
Well,
thank you very much.
I'm really interested as a person who loves history to get down into the roots of classical Christian education in that first generation when things were getting started there at Logos. So how did the Logos School in Moscow, Idaho get its start? And then how did you come to be working there?
Sure. Well, so hopefully this podcast will, go for 2-3 hours, so we can adequately cover it. No, I will.
This will be part 1 of 7 for everyone.
I'll give you the short version, and I'll also very crassly advertise a book that I wrote about Logos called Non Nobis. And it really is, like you were just saying, about the first generation, if you will, of classical educators, and particularly, of course, because what I know, the growth of Logos, the beginning and the growth of Logos, and ACCS. And anyway, that's available from Canon Press.
There you go.
There you go. But the very short version is Doug and Nancy Wilson deserve all the recognition for getting Logos kicked into gear and Nancy actually even more than Doug, because she told Doug that when Becca, their oldest daughter, was very tiny, that there was no way she was going to send her to the public school, that they were going to send her to the public schools. And Doug needed to do something about that. So Doug did, and got a committee of guys together from our church and said, we need to start a Christian school in Moscow at the time. Moscow is in the panhandle of Idaho, as you might know, and very small town, college town, farm town. At the time, there was a Catholic school, there was an Adventist school, and then the public schools. And so there was no non-denominational Christian school. Anyway, so in 1980, Doug and these guys and one lady formed the board of Logos, 3 people. Larry Lucas was the other one, Shirley Quist. Anyway, and you should know that the classical thing came later. Okay, it was not they had this vision for classical education. They just wanted to get a Christian school going, particularly for Doug's oldest daughter, Becca.
Yeah, he made some promises, I guess.
Yeah, you got to, yeah. And so Larry and Shirley also had kids they wanted to put in. Anyway, so I'll morph that into my involvement, which was actually kind of dragged in, kicking and screaming. Not really, but I actually wanted nothing to do with it. I'm not lying.
God has a sense of humor, doesn't he?
Oh, hugely. And I've known Doug since high school back in Michigan. That's another long story. But anyway, I knew they were forming this committee. I knew that they were trying to get the school off the ground. And what you need to understand is at the time our church, such as it was, met in a body shop. And I don't mean spiritual, I mean physical, like car.
You don't mean like a gymnasium either.
Not even a gym. It was a body shop.
Couldn't afford the gym.
Couldn't do a gym. And I remember thinking and telling Julie, even my wife at the time, that I said, can't we just be normal about where we send our kids to school? Can't we just do the normal thing?
I bet Julie remembered that one, didn't she?
She did. It came back to haunt me later. Anywho, well, so I just stayed away from any of the planning, and I was pursuing an art degree at the U of I here and planning to be an art teacher in a public school. And that was my goal. That was my aim. And Doug accosted me one day in the Christian bookstore, his father's, and said, hey, we're putting this school together, and what would you think of being the administrator? And oh my gosh, I laughed in his face, which is kind of rude, but I did. And I told him, Doug, I was doing my student teaching at the local high school, literally at that time in art. And so there were so many layers of why that was a bad idea. And so yeah, anyway, short version is, I'm trying to keep it short, believe it or not. I prayed about it because that's what he told me to do. He said, well, just pray about it. Which was,
that's the biggest Christian trick right there.
Oh, it is.
Because once you pray about it, then there are other forces that get involved.
Right. And anyway, so God laid it on my heart that I was not going to have any peace until I chased this thing down. So I met with the board and said, look, you guys are wise Christian people. If you really think I should do this, then I will do this because I think that's what God would have me do. And so, yeah. And then 35 years later, right?
Isn't that something?
Yeah. So we began in the fall of 81, September of 81, and 16 kids, added a couple over the year, met the classic, although we didn't know it was classic, church basement thing. And that's how we got going.
Yeah. Now, there's one story that I want to either have confirmed or denied here. And that is, did you all get paid the first 2 years? Or should paid be in scare quotes in that question?
Paid should be in scare quotes, yes. Because obviously I wouldn't be alive, or I wouldn't have stayed working for him. Because honestly, candidly, the first teachers were 3 single girls and me. Okay. And the second year was 5 single girls and me. So we really made a step up. And I was the only married one. I was the only one with children. And I told the board, sure, we'll do the faith thing. That's what we called it. We're living on faith. And that sounded good. But I did say, look, if there comes a day where I have to choose between paying the rent or finding another job or whatever, I will find another job, because my first obligation is to my family. And they totally agreed with that.
Yeah.
So anyway, our pay, such as it was, came in gifts. Parents had to pay tuition, $43. So I just thought you'd like that.
43. You mean these American dollars?
These would be American dollars, not Canadian. And I don't know why that sticks in my head, except that it does. And so that was so that we could pay the church that we were renting from and other things. But the salaries, such as they were, came from whatever gifts came in. So it was exciting.
Do you know the kind of glory there is in a willingness to take that step? Have you ever thought about that's like a little rock that just started an avalanche?
Well, I'm not sure what the rock is or the avalanche, but looking back, I think it was pretty weird. And God blessed us anyway. I think God loves fools in one sense. I think God loves the ignorant, because we just kind of go, hey, God, we're going to do this. Are you okay with that? And we don't really know anything else, but we're just going to do this.
Yeah. Well, I remember the first few years here at Veritas, the budgeting process took about 2 hours, and every line would be like 100% wrong at the end of the year, and it would, all the math would work. It would come out to like $76 in the black, and
right.
But you missed every line by double or half, one or the other.
Yes, you totally got it wrong. And so I don't recommend that schools do it that way to start out with. I really don't. I don't think
that was part of my interview. Well, that someone said this. I think it was Marlon Detweiler who said, at the Logos school they get paid in gifts and like canned goods and things like that.
Yes,
and I paused and I said, you're not planning on that, are you? Because, I've got a ticket to fly home here. I can do that. So when did you know you had something really special going, that was when did the classical thing come in, and when did you see,
Right.
my goodness, this thing has some traction?
That so much of what we did at Logos was, I don't know how else to say it, but it was like, didn't see that coming. And everything from, policies to the vision, was like, didn't see that coming. I remember the day that Doug brought the Sayers article, to our board meeting. We were already underway, and it was probably within the first year or so. In fact, I know it was. And he said he'd seen that in the Navy. He'd read that in I don't know where it was,
National Review, I think.
Yeah, or National Review. Anyway, and as he would say, he filed it away under and so he remembered it, and he pulled it out or found it, and we read it. And I literally can see us sitting around in this living room reading it and going, And our reaction was, this sounds really good. We have no idea how to do this, but why not? Let's give it a shot. And it sounds like a good philosophy that we could build on. Well, we really had no idea what we were doing.
Sayers is trying to bait people at the end, but no one.
Oh, yeah.
No one's
going to do this.
Yeah, no one's going to try it.
No one.
Come on, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah.
Yeah, she probably wasn't thinking about northern Idaho, though, when she was writing that.
I'm pretty sure I think that's safe to say. It sort of reminds me of Lincoln's thing, at the Gettysburg. He says, no one's going to long remember what we say here. Yeah. Whoops. Got that wrong.
Yeah.
So, no, but she did bait us and just say, well, so here's this thing, and nobody wants to do this. And so we did, or we said we would. And so for the next 10 years, okay, and you'll see why I say that. But for the next 10 years, every board meeting, part of our time was taken with, what is this? What is this classical thing anyway? 10 years. And we met weekly for much of that, by the way.
Wow.
That's how sad that is. So, but it was Doug and Larry, and pretty much it was, is this going to be pedagogical or is this going to be curricular? Okay. And you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. Is this going to be pedagogical or is this going to be largely curricular? And that was the debate that we had a lot. Well, then Doug in 91, 10 years later, writes Recovering the Lost Tools, okay, for the Turning Point series. And it goes out there and hits the airwaves, if you will. And a couple things happen. As you know, a few things happened, actually. One is we got inundated with cards, letters, phone calls, not the internet because Al Gore hadn't done it yet.
Yeah.
But the equivalent. And it wasn't people saying, gosh, we want to move to Moscow and make, Logos our home and stuff. It was, how do we do this where we live? Okay.
Yeah.
This is what we've been looking for in our Christian education. That was another thing we heard, was that the Christian schools largely suck. And I'm sorry, but that's what they said.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they didn't say that, but that's what they meant. And not that the public schools are terrible. Everybody knows that. But it was the Christian schools aren't doing their job. And this book is outlining what we want. And that's when we heard that we were not alone, and, that there were people that were excited about this vision. And away we went. So that's, of course, when ACCS was formed.
Yeah. So one of the most incredible things about classical Christian education, and it's really hard to describe this to folks that are in, like, the public schools or in a traditional Christian school, that there's this spirit in classical Christian education that is, I think, goes back to that moment that you're talking about when everybody started calling back when every call was long distance, they started calling Moscow, Idaho, and you guys picked up the phone. And instead of franchising it, instead of trying to figure out ways to monetize it, instead of trying to be everyone's, instead of trying to be the emperor, you just started handing out things, and
yeah, that was a mistake. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh no, golly, I just ruined the whole thing.
But I just popped your balloon there.
Yeah,
no, go ahead.
But you know, I think that it's astounding. You know, sometimes we've had people that have, you know, and I think this is a growing trend, that really good teachers who are Christians in the public school are just leaving. They're leaving,
Right.
like they're hitting the gag point at some points. Now, maybe they should have hit it sooner, but they're hitting it.
Yeah.
And I get questions like this from them. You know, how much politics is there at Veritas Academy? You know, do people actually like each other, or do they just fight? It is, you know, there's this passive aggressive like tension all the time, and I'm like, no.
No.
Or we had the head of one of the public school math departments come over and work as the head of our math department. And she poked her head in my office door and said, "You sure there's no paperwork you need me to fill out?" And I'm like, no, we try to keep that pretty light, because we'd have to buy a filing cabinet then to put that in. So, but
those staples aren't cheap either.
What was going through, and this is true of you, it's true of Doug, it's true of so many of those folks that were involved there in that foundational time at Logos, that you just had a generous spirit and a helpful spirit. Because I've seen people botch things like this. And what was it that you guys got that part so right?
Well, I guess, you know, honestly, Ty, I don't think we ever considered any other option. Maybe we were stupid. You know, we weren't being entrepreneurs or whatever. But part of it is, I think that we had seen God's rich blessings on us, especially by 10 years in. We had seen so many ways he had blessed us over and over and over again, saying, here you go, you know, and I mean, up to and including things of like dodging bullets, not real bullets, but, you know, making mistakes and yet still surviving, and just, seeing the school grow. And I think we just knew, you know, freely you've received, freely give. You know, it literally never entered our minds that we could monetize this. And that's why I was kidding when I said, well, we made a mistake. You know, we got this oil well, and you know, it smells good, so we'll hand it out. But no, we knew it was valuable in the sense of blessing families and children. We knew that was a valuable thing, but we never thought of it as ours. You know, like this is a thing we made, and you can have some of it for, you know, $10.55 or whatever. Certainly we eventually started a press because we had to make a lot of our own curricular materials.
Sure.
You know that.
They didn't exist.
And they didn't exist. There was nothing out there to fill in. And so we literally made them from scratch. And people would say, hey, can we get a copy of this or a copy of that? And well, sure, we'll mail them off and we'll charge you for the postage, you know. But so we weren't that stupid.
Well, but, folks, this is why a number of classical Christian schools inadvertently had in their curriculum guide that they were going to teach Idaho history in first grade.
Yes, that was so great. I would in the early days of ACCS, you and I both did this. We'd go to a school, you know, and visit a school and then look through their policy manual. It's like, you might want to white out Logos.
Yeah.
You know, just saying.
Yeah,
so,
no, but that's the kind of spirit that I'm talking about. Like, you know, like the policy manual. You know, I've been around to 20 or 30 schools on accreditation visits and stuff like that.
Right.
And the humming of those early policies at Logos is still bouncing around in many different policy manuals in ACCS.
Well, it is funny. I think the classic one, if you will, was I visited a school in Texas in the 90s, and many schools actually in Texas. But the one that struck me was they were the Knights. They had the same school colors. They had the same school song, you know, and it was I think named Logos, you know. And I was like, I'm so confused. I don't know where I am.
You're in the upside down.
I am in the upside down. And so parents came up to me that night, you know, and they go, hey, Mr. Garfield, just want you to know, we just love Logos. I'm like, Which one? I don't know what you're talking about.
You mean the doppelganger or the actual real?
Yeah, which the real one? Or no, I never said that, of course. But it was just sort of like, great, good, thank you, good, great.
Well, if imitation is the greatest form of flattery, I think that. And this is what I think is so beautiful about classical Christian education, is that you didn't try to make it a franchise, but what instead you encouraged daughter schools and sister schools to start up. And then, daughters should look a little bit like their mom.
That'd be good. Yeah.
I was always hopeful for that in the case of Emily and I. Take after your mother.
Well, in your case, it did turn out that way, thankfully for them.
Yeah.
It is. And I think that was, like I said, I give Doug credit for that because of the teaching from the pulpit, but I can also just tell you, it literally never occurred to us, hey, we could make a bunch of money off of it.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if we get any credit for that, but
I think if you would have tried to make a bunch of money, you probably would not have made a bunch of money.
Yeah, God would.
But instead you just gave everything away. And my goodness, I mean, you think about it, you're talking about 20 students at the beginning of Logos. And now, the Association of Classical and Christian Schools, has like 60,000 students in the association and growing like gangbusters now. So
you said it's like a family, and everybody says that about everything. But in this case, it's actually true in the sense that we all shared, if you will, from the same meal. We went to the same, recipe, and we shared ideas on how to make it even better. And so it grew organically. It really did, that. And so we became friends and we became very connected. And the idea of anybody charging for something else just would have been gross. So I'm not surprised, but I'm pleased that you see that.
Yeah. So what do you think the critical educational insights that you had? What was classical Christian education committed to from the beginning?
That's a good point, of course. And it's what established Logos anyway, and then later ACCS. And I won't go through the whole litany because that could take a while. But I'd say certainly tracking, building the program of education around the frame of the student, and not the other way around. Not trying to force fit something onto a student, and not individual education in that sense, but rather, as Sayers so profoundly put out there, taking a tried and true, time-tested approach to education all the way back to the founding of Western civilization, and then saying, you know what, let's trim, customize, piece this thing together, put it together, but build it around the frame of the kids as they grow, and see if we can make that work.
Didn't that just it just made so like Sayers is a good writer. Okay, so that
she's pretty good.
That helps. That helps pretty well. But I remember the first time I read The Lost Tools of Learning, and it's not a hard argument to buy. When she says like sense. Young kids memorize things well, and you go like, yeah, they do. And then she goes, then they get pert and they're argumentative, and you're like, yes, they are.
Yep. Check.
And then they want to be treated like adults, and they want to grow up and be mature and communicate well. And I'm like, yes, like none of like those things, they don't hit you as controversial. They hit you as like a stereotypical almost.
Right.
Or as a ninth grader once said at my school, I hate how everyone thinks we hate everything. I'm like, yes,
and there it is.
There it is. That's why we do it, right there.
Yes, right there. Case dismissed.
So,
boom.
Let's drop the mic. What's some of your favorite memories? Is from your so? How long were you head of school at Logos? Was it 31 years or
35?
35. Wow, I got a long ways to go yet. So, what are some of your favorite memories over those 35 years?
Well, again, that's, not to be too commercial, but that's why I wrote the book, is because I wanted to write all these memories down. And, probably, when I'm sitting around at 85, I'll just, where's my book? And I'll be the one that really enjoys it. It's sort of like, what's the favorite memory of your children? I thought about, in terms of accomplishment, I'm pleased we built the gym. That was kind of cool, that kind of thing. But I think, and I had all 4 of our kids go through there. We have 7 grands going through there. I mean, jeepers, right?
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, so in terms of, I guess, accomplishment, I feel extremely thankful for that, all 4 of our kids went the distance and now want all 4 of our kids. We have 11 grands. All of them are involved in classical education where they live, and 7 of them here. 7 grands here. So that's huge. That there's nothing really that touches that. But in terms of what you're specifically asking, I'd say I'll share this one, I think, watershed moment that really spelled it for us. And it was in the first 4 years. The parents, we were trying to do the secondary, the grammar stage, I refer to it as the honeymoon period because everybody loves it and it's so fun and everybody goes, wow, this is great. We love classical education.
Yeah.
And it's so obvious.
The kids are cute.
And the kids are cute and they're reciting and chanting and singing and everybody loves that. And so anyway, but then you get to the secondary and it's like, holy cow, what's this? And how do we make this, uniquely classical? How do we not burn the kids at the stake, And so we burned the kids at the stake and the parents weren't real happy about that. And so we had this big public meeting, well, big for us, whatever. And the parents told us 2 things at that meeting. They said, knock off the classical thing. It's not working. Okay. This was fun to hear. Knock off the classical thing. It's not working.
We can always edit this out.
Yeah, thank you. And the second thing was just stop at 6th grade. You guys are terrible at the secondary, so just don't try it. Okay. Okay. We were told both those things at this meeting. And so the board was there and we took that back and went, what do we do now? And it was at that point where, at least for my take, where we could have gone down one of 2 paths, right? And we could have said, yeah, you know what? This is too hard. Let's just, let's go with the fun part, the elementary part, stick with that, not try to put on the big boy pants. And anyway, as you know, that's not the decision that was made.
Yeah.
And the decision was made to say no to both those things. Now, we didn't ignore the concerns, but
yeah. So you got your feedback and then did the opposite.
Yeah. So we, we of course were polite, but we said, no, we're committed to the trivium. So we're going to go K-12. We're going to go the distance. And we're going to keep doing the classical thing, but we are going to try. I don't know what we said, but we came back and said something like, I'm sure, well, give us another chance.
Yeah.
And, and let us try to do this better. And we did, right? Well, we did. And we really worked hard at making the program still fit the kids and not try to fit the kids to the program. And anyway, but that was a very, very monumental point in time.
That's like burning the ships right there. I mean,
it was burning the ships. Yeah, it was like we're committed to this, and God help us, but this is what we're going to do.
Yeah. So how did you, Tom, over the years, we haven't sat in countless hours of board meetings together, but sometimes it feels like they're countless hours. But
yes.
you have always had such a good sense of humor, even when, I know as the association sometimes we were facing terrible challenges. And how do you keep and develop that sense of humor that you've had that's been kind of a calling card for you over the years?
I think because, honestly, Ty, I think my dad had a good sense of humor. And I think part of that is that he kind of said, well, you can either, cry or you can laugh. And you can either kind of take this seriously or not. And believe me, you and I both know this. There are times when we should have taken something seriously and we didn't. And it was like, oh, that was awkward. But no, God is so good. And there's usually something almost always kind of funny about everything. And I don't know, I have a hard time taking things seriously unless they're right in my face. And then I take them pretty seriously.
Well,
but,
in some senses, I kind of feel like no one thinks like, I guess it's only been in the last couple of years as the culture just starts to disintegrate around us that I've like felt wind at our back, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
back in the early days, I was kind of like, yeah, this is crazy. This is a crazy idea. There's no way this is going to work out. We might as well
Right.
enjoy it because I think we're only going to have the journey to talk about, not at the end, we're all going to be bankrupt or something like that.
Right. Right.
So
No, there've been, as I mean, I was kidding in a bad way if I said, well, it's just been such a fun ride. No, there's been really hard things, both at Logos and ACCS and personally, and all that, and yet God is so good that He brings us through those. And yeah, there's usually light at the end of the tunnel. There's usually the morning after the dark night, and you kind of go, well, we can look back on that and laugh, or just look back and go, that wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. And anyway, so
you have to remember, if something doesn't kill you, it just hurts you really, really bad.
Yeah. I was hoping you wouldn't do the rest of that. It doesn't necessarily make you stronger. No, not really.
No, it hurts like the Dickens.
We just get older. We don't get stronger. But we have had more joy than sorrow. And like I said, I just personally find things pretty, if somebody's really sincere, I really have a hard time with that. And so that's not necessarily a gift. So there you go. Yeah, I think the Lord has just shown His kindness and His sense of humor, and I don't want to miss it.
So if you could give one piece of advice to parents considering their educational options in a culture like this, what would it be? Say they've got kids that are starting kindergarten next year, and they're trying to say like, well, like here's a classical Christian school, here's a traditional Christian school, here's homeschooling, here's public schools. How do I think about this decision?
Right. Well, I mean, obviously my record shows I'm pretty into classical. So it won't come as a surprise that I say, look at the, if I can be crass, look at the end product. Classical education has been around for well over 30, pushing 40 years now, broadly. Mm-hmm. Look at the product. Look at the end. What do you want your kids to be like when it's all done? When basically, as Matt Whitling talks about, when the timer goes, when the stopwatch is done, 18 years old or whatever it is, and they go to college, or what do you want to see? And what do you want them to be like? And then look around and go, who's doing that? Who's got a pretty good track record of turning out kids the way we want them to turn out? And both obviously spiritually, but academically too, but spiritually most of all. And kind of go, so how'd they get there? Well, they did this program. And in my view, that's classical Christian. It's based on scripture first and foremost. I think the record is showing that over and over again. Yeah. It's not you and I both know, it's not a formula. It's not there's no write the check, get the product, but commit yourself to it. Once you go, that's what I want. Well, then don't vacillate, put your hand to the plow. Don't look back and go, there's going to be some rough times. You're going to have some teachers that don't know what they're doing. There's going to be, administrators who are boneheads, and
administrators who are doing their student teaching and then have an art degree and they're on the job.
Exactly. And they're going, what? And there's going to be some trips and falls and scrapes and bumps and all that kind of stuff, but hang in there, commit to the vision, commit to what you want for your kids, and stay with it, stay with it. That's my advice is don't, I think one of the big problems homeschoolers have, and I know a lot of them, they're dear friends and all that, is that they kind of vacillate. They kind of go, well, next year we'll try this. Next year, after that, maybe we'll see this, whether it's a publisher or a school or whatever. And no, stick with the program. Go the distance.
Well, and it's amazing how far you can go if you head in one direction and not back and forth and back and forth and up and down. So,
exactly. And you can see your progress. Yep.
What advice would you give to younger teachers and administrators in the movement? because it's a different, I'm, and maybe this kind of bleeds over into another area I wanted to talk with you about. And that is, I just felt like in the last couple of years that, we're like the, sixth grade girl who looks really frumpy. And then we just got beautiful, right? Like in the last 2 years.
Wow.
No, it's funny that odd vendors start showing up at the conference and you realize, oh, we're a market now. They
want our attention now.
Right. Yeah. So like we're for a while now, all of Christian education's growing right now, but I mean, we were we everybody that was at the national conference in the summer, all of the vendors were like, you cut them and they would all bleed just classical Christian blood. That's all all we had. And then, I realized, there are colleges here, and now they're like, they're like candle makers here. And then you're like,
wow.
Yeah. You're like Christian pillows. I don't understand. Like
classical Christian candles.
Yeah. And then it's just like, oh, we're attractive now, but that's a very different kind of temptation. So could you speak to that a little bit? What advice would you give to those folks that, I mean, from your perspective, for sure, and from my perspective as well? I've been in this 27 years now. I meet people that if the new folks to me, it seems like they're born on like sliding into third base at least, Yeah.
Well, if I could, work your metaphor of the sixth grade girl, I think that classical education right now, I think if we can call it the movement, the trend, the program is in the greatest danger it's ever been in. Okay. Just like a girl who finds out she's pretty because all the boys are swarming her.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. She's in mortal danger.
But might feel the happiest she's felt in all of her life.
Exactly. She's feeling popular. She's feeling accepted. She's, feeling pretty. And again, this is, two guys talking about girls. This is great.
Yeah.
But I have 3 daughters, so I know something about this. And you have 4, so you know something about this. So, but yeah, I think breaking out of the analogy a little bit, I think classical education is in dire danger right now because of that very thing. I think we can become victims of our own success to one degree. And I think the temptations right now are to go, hey, we really are pretty. And how do we get prettier? How do we become more appealing to this group or whatever? How do we make Harvard like us? And is that,
well, I can think of some
You know?
ways that we could get some colleges to like us. I just don't know that Jesus would like us then.
There it is. There it is. I mean, I'm not saying we're the last bastion of Christianity, but we are a bastion of Christianity. I mean, just like every church is,
Mm-hmm.
and every home is. And I think ACCS, or just the classical school movement broadly, is in dire danger of forgetting where they came from and going for the easy win. Okay, the easy win, by that I mean acclamation of the world. That'd be easy if we just kind of soften down some stuff. Okay, if we just kind of went the direction that Harvard and Yale and Dartmouth all did, a couple hundred years ago.
Yeah, just
lighten up on that Christ stuff, and don't be so rigorous. And Sayers, passe. Let's get past Sayers. Let's get past the 7 laws. Let's not be so rigid. And that kind of thing. And kind of, big surprise, we'll lose our moorings. We'll lose our moorings and be cast adrift. And, and then end up, I won't name names, but like any other Christian school organization, without any real binding philosophy, without any real vision, we'll just be there and be a place for either the snob appeal or for the, keep my kid out of the drugs and sex crowd or whatever, or a combination of those things. So, so that's
well,
I just,
and that is, that is, So I think that there's this tension that I feel, and some of it is, with this size of a project, I always joke with people. It's not a joke, so I guess I shouldn't say I'm joking with them, but it's we're 40 years into a 1,000-year project,
Right.
So
Right.
So we have to learn. We have to go further up and further in. We have to keep on growing in our knowledge of this thing.
Right.
But
right.
we have to stay.
Right.
We have to stay on the foundation. Most assuredly, I mean, the foundation of Christ. That's got to be under everything, and then the foundation of the stuff that you all did. That's got to be. We want that same DNA. We want granddaughters to look like their mothers,
Exactly.
and their grandmothers, because that same kind of generous spirit that is connected to Christian charity is still evident in our schools and in our families and in the students that are at our schools. And
Right.
I mean, I know that you probably have had a chance to feel this even more than I have, but when you see an alum out there doing what they should be doing things that honestly I can't, some things I can imagine myself doing, or I could imagine myself in a past life doing. We have alumni now that are doing things that I cannot imagine what. And I get very proud at that point. Like I've lost a few buttons, I think, on my button-down shirts, because that is just so exciting to see kids following Christ and just so well prepared for the calling that God gives them.
Right. And so that's happened and is happening, like you said, with maybe, with your own kids, which is the first and foremost, of course, that you're concerned about. My kids, which I'm concerned about, my grandkids, everybody wants that. Every Christian family wants that, but you're either going to go, okay, I'll pay money for that. I'll formulaic that, or I'll do what it takes today, tomorrow, the next day to make that happen.
Yeah.
And as Americans, particularly, we want the fast and easy. We want we want it hot and we want it now. And we're really drawn to the new and the improved.
Yeah.
Okay. And I am not calling for any kind of nostalgic, let's, just all be in a church basement. That'd be stupid.
Everyone's studying Idaho history again.
Yeah, everybody come to Idaho, to study our history, such as it is.
We can't afford homes in Moscow anymore.
Well, that's actually true. No, so it's not a looking back in some sort of bizarre, nostalgic, sentimental way. It's saying, no, we do need to go further up, further. And what does that look like? How do we know we're doing the right thing? Well, we look back and go, okay, is that in line with where we've come from?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right? Is that in line with our bearings? What are our bearings? Well, we have to know our bearings.
Yeah.
And that means we're going to say no to some things that sound fairly legit, because it sounds like, hey, we'll get more popular. We'll be, the Ivy League schools will accept us, or we'll show up on this news program, or whatever. We'll be somehow accepted more, even by, Christians, because, this big church wants to start a classical school, but they want to soften down this stuff. And do we really need to do Latin? What's with that Latin thing?
Mm-hmm.
And so every point, not every hill you die on, but there better be a few.
Yeah.
And you need to know what those are.
Well,
go ahead.
I was saying that, we're 40 years into a 1,000-year project, so we better keep on learning, keep on going deeper into this classical Christian idea. But
right.
I think that what you said that was really meaningful to me and that I've seen is there's a desire to be cool.
Right.
And like our culture is not, and listen, I think it's so much worse than it was, 27 years ago when I started, or 35 years ago when you started. There were still, remnants of Christian civilization. Yeah. If our culture's patting you on the back now,
Heavens,
you got trouble. You got trouble.
Right.
So,
You got trouble, my friend. Yeah. And our kids, and you know this, our kids, our grandkids are seeing things we could never, ever have said, oh, yeah, they're going to be debating boys and girls, Nope, didn't see that. Schaefer didn't even see that coming, And maybe he would have if he'd lived long enough. But, excuse me. But that's just it. We don't know how bad they're going to get, right? Yeah. We don't know where the bottom is. And our job is not to prepare for every one of those contingencies, but like you said, knowing Christ better and then saying, okay, how do we bless our kids? Because every parent has to do that. And there's no, somebody said there's no, second generation faith in that sense. You can't DNA pass that on.
Every generation has to make it their own.
Exactly. And the classical schools won't do it for them. That should be understood. But they are a huge help if they're held accountable to the vision, to what is this about? And at some point it's already happening. Christians telling other Christians, no, I can't go with you there. I know that seems like a good idea to you, but that's not in keeping with our vision for our school or for my family. I can't do that with you. And that's where Christians go, well, gosh, you're not very loving. You're not, you're not very like Jesus because you're not accepting. You're not tolerant enough. Right. And the battle is engaged.
Yeah. Well, and that's the horrifying story of our culture right now. So,
yeah.
Tom, what are you up to these days?
Well, as you might know, I'm working for Marlon Detweiler, something I thought I'd never say. He for those that don't know, Marlon and I go way back. He was on the founding board of ACCS. He was the first chairman of ACCS.
Yeah.
And came out to our first
he lives a lot closer to me than he does to you.
But he lives a lot closer to where people live as opposed to where I live, where nobody lives. But yeah, so we got to know the Detweilers back at the beginning of ACCS, back in 91, 93, and have been friends ever since. And anyway, Marlon and Lori started a number of classical schools, including your own, and then Veritas Press, and then 16 years ago, Veritas Scholars Academy, an online classical school, Christian classical school. Anyway, when I retired from Logos, for some reason they thought I still had some gas in the tank, I guess, and asked me to come on to Veritas Scholars Academy as their Dean of Academics and also get to teach art. So
they finally,
I know, right? Well, I did for 36 years.
I know.
Yeah. Anyway, but so the Lord didn't take anything. He just used it in his own way, which he tends to do. Yeah. But so I'm still administrating, still teaching art, but I get to do it from the comfort of my home. And now I have a whole new cadre of compadres with Veritas, working for Dr. Bob Cannon, one of the greatest guys ever. You know that.
Yeah.
And he's the headmaster of the school. So yeah, that's my thing. Full time. I teach 3 art classes, but yeah, a lot of it is frankly observing and evaluating our 150 plus teachers.
Well, and Tom, I'm just going to say, moving into online schooling before COVID, that's probably a good idea. That was probably a good idea.
That was one of the smartest moves I've ever done, and I didn't even know I was going to do it. Yeah, yeah, we didn't miss a day of school. It was really fun.
That's so good. Well, Tom, thank you so much for being on Cultivate. And it's a pleasure every time I get to talk to you. So thank you for all that you've done over the years to bless the classical Christian schooling movement and just to bless me personally. So thank you.
Well, thank you, my friend. It's been a fun ride with you, and I appreciate the honor of chatting with you today.
You've been listening to Cultivate, the podcast of Veritas Academy, a preschool through 12th grade classical Christian school in Leola, Pennsylvania. If you would like to learn more about Veritas, please visit veritasacademy.com to discover the truth, beauty, and goodness of classical Christian education.